We have 16 new watches that just hit the site. We have some quirky water-related watches, some iconic sports models, and some other watches that you really never see. And for once, we have less vintage Rolex than other brands out there hitting the website. Without further ado, we got a lot to get through. Let's dive right into it. Before I start, let's do a quick wrist check. We don't really do this often enough. Today, I am wearing a watch that didn't hit the website because we forgot to shoot it, quite frankly. It is a reference 25720BA Audemars Piguet Starwheel, one of my favorite watches. This one, yellow gold, guilloche dial. Honestly, such an iconic watch that AP recently reinvigorated in their code cases. If you are interested, you can hit us up directly since it will be on the website if it makes it to the next drop. Anyways, we have, like I said, a lot to get through. I don't even know really where I want to start, but I guess let's start with some water theme related watches. I say that because it's not just dive watches. The first watch, definitely the cheapest that hit the website, but one of my favorites is this Gallet Yachting Chronograph. This is from their MultiChron line. It is from the 1960s. There are earlier iterations of this watch. This one has a later Gallet style font that they used in the 60s and 70s and a Valjoux 7733 movement. Gallet argues that it is the first regatta chronograph timer watch that they put on their website way back when. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is a stunning watch. These are awesome watches because they're 37mm stainless steel. They have this big eye register on the right, so it has that awesome look, kind of similar to Universal Genève big eye chronograph, one of the most famous UGs in the world and popular. Condition on this watch is absolutely stunning, and we've seen a really big revitalization of interest in Gallet ever since they got quote-unquote bought by Breitling, and we expect to see some new models introduced in the future, probably a few years out since they're starting with UG first. But we're very excited because I'm a huge fan of Gallet. There's so much history and importance in that brand. Even President Harry Truman favored the Gallet, famously wearing a flying officer with a black dial. Anyways, really happy to see Gallet coming back into the fold in collecting circles and vintage, and with the revitalization of the brand by Breitling in the near future. Moving along, let's stick without Rolex for a second. We have another one of my favorite models to have in stock. This is the Breguet Tourbillon reference 3350. It is the first Classique tourbillon that Breguet made under the tutelage in the late 80s by Daniel Roth before he left the brand to start his own. This model was produced circa 1996. So it would have been after Daniel Roth had already left the brand around 1988, but it is the same model that he himself invented while under Breguet. Fantastic watch, honestly, just does absolutely everything right. Getting a lot harder to find. They made a lot fewer of them than the successor 3357s, and absolutely love to wear this watch. It's just perfect, elegant, works well in every occasion, and the condition on this one is absolutely stunning. Okay, we're gonna bounce over to everybody's favorite vintage Rolex. We don't have a lot, so let's start off with just the two sports models immediately in front of me. It's been a very long time since we've had on the website a 1980s white gold surrounds 5513 gloss style Submariner, because quite frankly, a lot of the dials are spider, the cases are beat up. It's really hard to find one in nice condition. This one just came in the office. We just had it serviced. Beautiful condition, absolutely no spidering to the lacquer, full gloss, beautiful yellow patina, unpolished case, and I absolutely love these 5513s as kind of like a daily Submariner where you're not going for something from the 1960s like a gilt dial that you're worried is going to be too fragile, and you don't have to break the bank to get into these watches. Absolutely fantastic daily wearer watch if you want something a little more vintagey than, let's say, a 16610 or a 14060. Of course, we always have to have a tried and true GMT-Master. If you guys watch the channel enough, you'll know that my favorite sports Rolex is the GMT-Master. I'm very partial to the matte dials. I love the variations and the way the bezels age. This one happens to be a Mark V dial. It has original box and papers. It was originally sold in Austria around like 1981, and it was produced in 79. Quite frankly, I absolutely love the aesthetic of this one. If you look at the bezel, it has this nice faded blue jeans look with a light blue on top and a pinkish color on the bottom. Condition is also really, really nice. Strong case, perfect dial, nice creamy lume. Just a really honest and amazing example for the everyday kind of GMT wearer. Jumping back over to the other side of the pond for a second, we only have one Patek hitting the website this week, but it is a really cool one. This is a reference 3445J for yellow gold, Calatrava. The 3445 was actually the first Calatrava with a date function that Patek made in serialized production. condition, kind of a quirky, cool thing. They are amazing watches, and for the value, you get a lot out of your watch. 35 millimeters with these faceted lugs, screw back, waterproof case, has a date function. They wear extremely well on the wrist, and the prices have really kind of been low and stable for years and years and years. You could pick up really nice examples, and let's say in yellow gold to the 8 to 12,000. This one we're going to be listing for a little bit higher because it is co-signed by the retailer Serpico and Lino out of Venezuela. Very famous and illustrious retailer, kind of like Tiffany in New York. Venezuelans had Serpico and Lino. And by the way, also the condition on this watch is fantastic. So hard to find, and that's why we have so few of them in and out the office. Let's stick with a very similar brand to Patek, Vacheron Constantin. This is probably, I have to say, maybe my favorite vintage reference from Vacheron. I mean, there's like some really rare, like quirky stuff from the 40s and 50s that they only made like 3 examples of this or that. But this is, I guess, more neo-vintage. This one has its original box and papers and even has the gold setting pin. It is a reference 43031J Perpetual calendar. It was VC's answer to the Patek 3940, to the AP 5548, these 36 millimeter round Perpetual calendar watches that were so popular in the 1980s and continue to be popular in vintage collecting circles now. I absolutely love the VC version of it. I think it's a much more striking and elegant example compared to the 3940 and the 5548 or the 25548. It has a lapis moon phase, which I absolutely love, and this example is like a cream doré color dial, so it kind of matches the color of the watch. It's kind of like tone on tone. Anyways, for some reason I've always been way more partial to the VC Perpetual calendar as compared to the Patek and AP, although they're all fantastic watches. Also extremely hard to find them full condition like this, and in the condition that this one was in, just serviced. Everything good to go, ready, waiting for its next home. I've actually had one of these in my personal collection in the past. They are absolutely amazing. I guess you guys could tell I like this watch a lot. Let's jump back over to Rolex for a second. We have 2, I guess you could call them stone dials, although one technically isn't a stone, but let's start with the stone. It is one of my favorite, or maybe even my favorite Rolex stone dial, the Tiger Eye. I just absolutely love when you rotate this watch and you look down on it. It's kind of like a 3D effect, the way the colors kind of change and play. It almost looks like different dials the more you rotate the dial. Anyways, this is a Datejust reference 16018 from the late 70s. So sapphire quickset model, so you don't have to worry about plastic crystal on its original Jubilee bracelet. Most of the times you'll see them on presidential bracelets that were likely swapped on, as these Jubilee bracelets did get really worn out very easily. This one's still in great condition. Perfect, no crack dial. Just honestly, I wore this watch actually a lot. We just picked it up in Europe while I was away on vacation, and I wore it throughout my entire trip. Just such a fun, amazing watch to wear. And like I said, when you look down on it, the way the colors shine back at you and kind of change, it makes it look like the dial literally is changing as you're looking back at it. Tiger Eye's always just been a personal favorite. Let us know down below what your personal favorite stone dial is. I'm interested to hear everybody's opinions. And like I said, we have another, I guess not technically a stone dial. This is a wood dial. As I'm sure most of you know, Rolex did produce certain watches with wood grain dials, starting with the reference 1803 with a Sequoia, transitioning into the 18038, 18238, 18078 bark finish with birch and burlwood finish dials. The later quickset, like this one is, this is a reference to 18038 with its original box of papers, did have a lacquer finish on top of the wood, so it gives it that like nice and shiny appearance, whereas the earliest versions in the reference 1803, the Sequoias, did not have that lacquer. It's like literally just looking at a piece of wood. So I really appreciate the lacquer finish because it kind of gives it that glossy texture, really beautiful. But anyways, like I said, this is the birch finish. Absolutely perfect. No cracks to the lacquer, no cracks on the wood grain finish. Excellent condition watch with its original box and papers. These always fly quickly, and I understand why, because you don't have to pay those crazy stone dial premiums to get a wood dial. So I think it's really an awesome watch that you're getting an inherent value in by getting something interesting and unique and not paying, let's say, double the price of this watch for even a basic onyx dial. Sticking with a date, for example, we only have one more hitting the site, and guys, like, sometimes you just got to do it. You just got to go for it. You just got to be the best version of yourself, wearing the craziest, blingiest watch you could find. This one is a very specific reference 18388, specific reference because Rolex put diamonds on not only the bezel as we see a lot, but on the lugs as well, with what they call a Pave string dial with rubies and diamonds both on the dial. Just such a wild watch, especially when you consider when this was produced in the late 80s, early 90s. This one also with its original box and papers, but honestly, it's just such a stunning, crazy watch. Like, I gotta be honest, obviously it's not an everyday watch, it's a special occasion watch, but it is so interesting and cool, and you have to imagine that this was part of Rolex's, at the time, very high end of their production, meaning that you couldn't probably just walk in and buy this one in the counter. It was a special order kind of watch, kind of like their Crown collection stuff or their off-catalog stuff that we drool over now when every time there's a Watches and Wonders and we see that crazy ruby Daytona or whatever. Well, this was that, but in the late 80s, early 90s. Anyways, just fantastic. Honestly, just there's no other way to put it. Just fantastic. Just so cool. Just so cool. We only have one Rolex left, moving away for a second. If you guys also have watched this channel enough, you will know that my favorite vintage dive watch of all time is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. I absolutely love the history. I love the story behind them. I love all the military applications for them. I love all the different iterations, but mostly sometimes you just have to really gel with a watch and like the way it looks on your wrist and like the way it makes you feel. Every time I put on a 50 Fathoms with these elongated lugs and a 41mm case and these massive Bakelite bezels with these glossy dials, I just feel nothing other than cool. I just imagine myself diving with Jean-Jacques Cousteau with these awesome watches on my wrist, and it just makes me feel happy. This is a very rare iteration of the 50 Fathoms. It is a late 60s, early 70s, no radiations, AquaLung. So what that means is Blancpain began to produce in the late 60s the no-rad version of the 50 Fathoms for civilian use, meaning that they had understood at that point that radium was not really safe for use in wristwatches, and governments were changing their laws and rules around the use of radium. So they produced these dive watches with tritium, or they transitioned to tritium, and they put a nice logo in the middle of the dial so that you knew that this had no radiation in it. That is what is called the no-rad dial, or no radiations, with a nice logo in the center showing you that there is no harmful material in the watch. And I said earlier AquaLung, well, that means that this watch was retailed. It's not the model name. It was retailed by a dive equipment store called AquaLung that was very prevalent in the 1960s that would retail for sale these Blancpain 50 Fathoms dive watches for their clients. It even is on what I think is the original Tropic strap, because this is what the strap would have looked like when it was sold in the 1960s. I can't verify if this is the actual original one, but it is period. And this one was auctioned in, I think, Christie's a couple years ago. Fantastic condition, perfect dial, perfect lume, unpolished case, just really amazing untouched example, and it will be available on the site shortly. Let's stay with one other non-Rolex before we jump over. This is a quirky one. We do not get enough of these in the office. It is a Daniel Roth. This is from their, I guess you could say, Sentier line of cases. This is a reference C207 in 18 karat white gold. This watch, by the way, is nicknamed Seconds at 6 by collectors because you have a subsidiary Seconds hand at 6 o'clock. This would have been after Daniel Roth had already sold the company to Hourglass. So you have to understand that there are essentially 3 eras of Daniel Roth watches. The era in which he actually produced them himself from circa like 1988 to 1994, produced watches for like 6 years, and then he sold the majority of the company to the Hourglass, a Singapore-based retailer, who then produced watches that kind of carried over the same aesthetic and feel, some movement changes, some minor tweaks to watches, upgraded and increased production and model offerings by them after the Daniel Roth era, which I think continued for around 10 years until they sold the company to Bulgari. Bulgari produced some watches not my favorite, I'll be honest. The Bulgari stuff, kind of crap. But Bulgari made some watches under the Daniel Roth name for quite a long time, until they recently as well sold the company to LVMH, who are now reintroducing the brand with some really fantastic watches, Daniel Roth and the Gerald Genta line. Anyways, getting back to this watch, it is the larger size because they made this time-only watch in 2 different sizes, a smaller version and this 38 by 35. Like I said, really hard to find watch, 18 karat white gold, guilloche dial. It has this really rare dial variant, gray guilloche pattern with Roman numerals and an overlapping subsidiary seconds register. Usually they kind of sit flush inside the center part of the dial. This one overlaps. You really don't see it very often. This would have probably been early production under the Hourglass moniker, or under the Hourglass banner, I guess you could say. Really, like I said, don't see a lot of these. They always fly off the shelf when they do come in the shop. It's really hard to find and collect early Daniel Roth stuff, either from the Daniel Roth era or the Hourglass era. It's such like a niche but awesome part of vintage watch collecting, because Daniel Roth was such an important figure in the independent watchmaking circle. Moving along, let's finish up our last Rolex hitting the website. It happens to be a really good one though. This is a reference 6305 Datejust. It is one of the earliest production Datejust that Rolex made in the early 50s. The 6305 was the successor to the 6105, essentially the same watch, both with fluted bezels and similar dial variants, 36mm case. They are nicknamed the Ovettone, or Italian for big egg, as Rolex needed more space or a thicker case, kind of like the bubble backs, to accommodate the movement. Anyways, these early Datejust are really special. They are such a different aesthetic to the Datejust we all know, starting with like the 1601, 1603 era and moving on into the modern era. They really have a completely different look. Even the fluted bezel is serrated so much more thinly. It is such a special watch to wear on your wrist. It has so much presence. Original radium, and this one happens to be also in rose gold, so it's a little bit different as well. You really do not see a lot of them in rose gold. Honestly, just very special, cool, early Rolex collecting that you really don't see very often, and they're very hard to find in good condition. And this one happens to have a beautiful patina dial, absolutely naturally aged, very, very gorgeous and fun to wear on the wrist. Okay, we have only 4 watches left, and surprisingly, they're all AP. I didn't do that on purpose. We have 3 Royal Oaks and 1 non-Royal Oak. I guess let's start with the non-Royal Oak. This is actually a very quirky watch. At first glance, it looks like a reference 25589, which is their calendar, so day, date, moon phase watch, not a Perpetual or not a QP. But this happens to be based on the original box and papers here. I didn't even know this reference existed, actually, a 5588BA, and I'm assuming it is a specific reference because it is earlier. This one's like circa 1985. It was like 2 weeks off my actual birthday, or I would have kept it if it was actually my birthday. Anyways, because I assume it has a specific reference because of the integrated bracelet, unlike the 25589 that has lugs and you can change straps on, this one has a absolutely integrated bracelet that you cannot remove. This beautiful woven pattern on it, absolutely striking, early enamel style dial. Honestly, I had to buy this watch just because I've never seen it before. And with the original box and papers, you know, it's just something that you really, really never get to own and wear and enjoy. And I actually couldn't even wear it because the bracelet is fully length and uncut, so it was too big for my wrist, but great for the next owner of the watch because they don't have to worry about buying an integrated bracelet that is going to be too small for him, which is the #1 concern when buying an integrated bracelet watch. Has it been cut too short? Can I actually wear the watch? And most of the times when they are cut too short, there's no way to go back from that. Sometimes you could build a little ladder extension in the clasp. Aside from that, there's no way usually to beef these bracelets back up in terms of the size. So you really want to make sure that you're buying a watch that has a long bracelet, or long enough that it'll at least fit you. Anyways, absolutely fantastic watch. Like I said, I love having watches that I've never seen before, never owned before, just something interesting, different, unique, and this certainly fits the bill for somebody who wants something that no one else is going to have on their wrist. So the last 3 watches, not by design. Again, if you've watched the channel, you'll know I'm a major fan of this model. It is, for me, Gerald Genta's most iconic model he has ever produced. No, not the Patek Philippe Nautilus. I'm talking about the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. We have 3 amazing examples hitting the website. I'm going to start with the newest and work my way back to the oldest. So the newest is a reference 14790 ST, so a 1990s mid-size 37mm stainless steel model. But this is no ordinary 14790. This one was fit with an Yves Klein blue dial. Yves Klein was a very famous French artist, very popular throughout like the 50s and 60s. He did a lot of pop art, some sculptures, and what he is most well known for, I think, is that he invented this shade of blue, which I think he like patented or trademarked or something like that. But anyways, it is referred to as the Yves Klein blue. It is this like rich royal blue that's much different to the regular blue that AP would use on these dials, which is a lot darker. It is absolutely stunning and striking, and some of the most popular and sought after AP dials in any model that you can find. Everybody is always looking for Yves Klein stuff just because it is such a rich color of blue that you really don't see very often. I absolutely adore these mid-size Royal Oaks because they are so perfect in every occasion. They wear well on anybody's wrist. I don't care who you are. Even if you have a large wrist, you can wear the mid-size models, where sometimes I would agree that the 33mm models might be a little smaller, but the 37mm watches wear well on small wrists, big wrists, every wrist. It's a perfect like everyday kind of Royal Oak. Moving down chronologically, we have another model that I am very, very fond of. It is the 39mm Perpetual calendar model, this one in yellow gold, the reference 25654BA. The 25654 was the second iteration of the Royal Oak Perpetual calendar following the 25554, which is essentially the same watch, just a little bit thinner, produced for a much shorter amount of time since it was the first model before they transitioned to the 25654. The 25654 they made I think around 10 years, and they produced approximately 800 examples, less than half of which were in yellow gold. This one is an early example with a white small font MK1 dial. You know that by looking at the Audemars Piguet automatic on the dial and seeing that it is small, non-traditional or non-modern font that you see on the newer models. I absolutely adore these early Perpetual calendars. For one, they're 39mm. I think the new models at 42mm are way too big on the wrist, way too clunky. These 39mm Perpetuals were perfect the first time they made them. They should have always stuck with this size, and hopefully they'll bring it back in the future. And second of all, I love the early ones because they do not have the leap year indicator at the top of the dial, giving it a much cleaner look. There are plenty of leap year indicator Royal Oak Perpetual calendar watches that I do like, but I am always preferential to the earlier versions because it's a much sleeker, amazing look, in my opinion. And moving along for our final watch, we have another Jumbo Royal Oak, but like I said, we are working from newest to oldest. This is the first reference circa mid-1970s Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. You already know the reference 5402 ST for stainless steel. This is a B series, meaning it was made in the second batch of production, like I said, mid-1970s. The B series, only 1,000 pieces were produced, whereas the A series were the first 2,000 pieces. This one in exceptional and beautiful, honest condition, with a lovely blue dial that has a nice tropicalization to it, so some light discoloration to the tapestry finish on the ribbed AP dial. This has the original AP at 6 blue dial, original hands, beautiful case, just a really, really nice example on a hard to find watch and a hard to find in good condition and attractive watch. The original Royal Oak, I've said it before and I will say it once again, they hit it out the park and they did it the best the first time they made the watch. All of the new iterations, you know, the 15202, 16202, all these newer iterations, they're all great, but these are the best. They're the most comfortable to wear, most iconic, for me the most collectible, or at least they should be the most collectible. Just absolutely a perfect sports daily wear watch if you could pull it off. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching the video with me. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. If you are interested in learning more about any of these amazing watches, they will be available on the website by the time this video goes live. As always, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram or send us an email. Reach out directly if you need any more information. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys on the next one. Bye.